Today we're going to build our own ChatGPT into the Power Apps. Using the Azure OpenAI, we will deploy our own models and using a Power Automate to call our API in the Power Virtual Agent. Now let's see how we can get that into the actions. First, go to your Azure OpenAI. Make sure you have the prescription. So we'll create a new resource. Let's call it, okay, use the existing one, that's fine. Choose East US and give it a name. We'll call it ChatGPT EVA demo. I'm going to select a price tier and go next. I'm going to select all networks, but you probably won't do that if you are building this for internal corporate only. Gonna go to create, and now we wait. Once it's done, let's go to the resource. So now we are in our Azure OpenAI resource. Next thing you want to do is deploy your model. So let's click on this, go to OpenAI Studio. We'll go to deployment. Maybe just click here, create new deployment. We're going to create a new deployment. And the model we're going to choose is just GPT 3.5. And we'll give it a name. ChatGPT PVA demo. Create. Now that didn't take long. And we can open this. And this is our demo. Open in the playground. And you can try some basic prompt. You can chat with it. We don't have to select a system message. Remember from GPT 3.5 and 4, you can define a system role. Just basically tell bot what type of bot is going to behave as. It's called system message, right? And here you can just start typing your message and chat with it. Hello. API deployment for this resource does not exist. If you created it within the last 5 minutes, please wait. Okay, so we'll come back and show you how you can use this. Now it's about 5 minutes. Let's test this. Hi. The bot is responding. Can you explain quantum physics to me like a child? Okay, so you can see this is just a ChatGPT basically 3.5, but within Azure tenants. Okay, we're not going to make much modification to it because our goal here is just to bring ChatGPT into our Power virtual agent and to use it with Azure OpenAI model internally. So we're not gonna put too much boundaries on the system role. And you can see this is actually all wrong. We don't need, these are just the messages I typed. Not actually it's not wrong. So the role, system role is your AI content and this, oh, it is wrong. Role user, role system, role user, role, okay, that is not wrong. Okay, this is just basically what's happening in this chat window. And yeah, that's all we need to know. Now, just real quickly to show you a few difference. In the public OpenAI, this part we just saw is very similar. We'll define the system role, then the user message, and this is the response from the model. What's different is, for example, this article talks about how to switch OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. Actually, you can see in OpenAI, we know the key API key start with SK, and we usually put a bearer in front of that. In Azure OpenAI, it's just the OpenAI keys right there. And of course, endpoint is different. If we have a look at this, the endpoint will be, you're going to copy this as your endpoint, which we're going to use later in the Power Automate. And this is your API keys. Okay. Very straightforward. For those of you who are interested, somebody asked what's different between Azure OpenAI and OpenAI. I think most of you, if you are looking into this for the company, you will most likely worry about where the data sits, right? So here, the data submitted to the Azure OpenAI so remains with Microsoft Azure and is not passed on to OpenAI, right? So my understanding is your company has your own Microsoft Azure tenant. These data should stay within your tenant and they are not used to train the actual model. And also, it's not a public model. You are using your private model within your Azure OpenAI, which also sits within the tenant. I can paste this link in description, which explains the data privacy and security for Azure OpenAI services. Okay. Now we've got our own Azure OpenAI model deployed. It's time to test it. The quickest way to test it is to call the API from our Power Automate flows. Now this time we'll do something different compared to the previous videos we've done. This time we're gonna do everything within a solution. Okay, so let's just start a new solution from Power Apps, and let's call it Azure Open call it Chat GPT PVA demo. Select a publisher. I had one created. You can use the default and just go create. So the reason we want to use solution is not only it's easier for us to deploy it from dev to prod, also instead of using the API keys directly in the flow, we're gonna put into environment variable, which you have to do it within solution. And everything you do today will be in the same solutions. Okay. So first let's go new and create environment variable to hold our endpoint URL and our API keys. It's called GPT model. Description will have endpoint URL and API key. And we're gonna add a JSON format. So you can create text and put your API key here and create another variable to put endpoint here as text. But I'm just gonna create one variable having two different values in JSON array. If you have a look at my blog, this is what the JSON array format should look like. So here you're gonna paste between double quotes your API endpoint that I showed you before, and here is just your API keys. And we're gonna paste the whole, copy and paste the whole thing into the environment variable. Now we got that value in, save it. Next, we will create a Power Automate just to test that model works. And later on, when we create our Power Virtual Agent, we're gonna call the same flow and just make some modifications with the input and output. Okay, so we go to new, go to automation, go cloud flow. Let's try instant flow. We're just gonna try a manual input. And we'll call it ChatGPT PV demo. I just call everything the same. Now, if you did a manual instant cloud flow like this outside the solution, but you had to create solution, the variable inside the solution, you will not be able to import this flow back to a solution. There's some limitations for the certain trigger flows, so you have to start this flow within your solution. Okay, the manual trigger, we're just gonna provide user input that will serve our user questions that we're gonna pass to the model. Next, we're gonna do the HTTP action. Some of you will remember this when we did our very first video. Also creating ChatGPT with the Power Virtual Agent, but we use the public OpenAI model, not the private one. Now, most of these are the same. You're gonna use a post. Now you're gonna use this URI, which is the endpoint of our model. Now you could just paste straight in, but here we're gonna use the parameters that we grabbed from environment variable. So when you highlight here, you can see the parameter came up, Azure OpenAI. Now this is the old one created before. All right, so this is the one, GPT model, that's the one we just created. Okay, but now we're not gonna just click here and put it in here because remember this variable, we had two values in it. It's a JSON for JSON array. There's two values. In here, we're just gonna reference to the endpoint. So we're gonna use an expression. The expression you're gonna use is just the parameter. And in here, we're gonna pick dynamic content and then pick the environment variable we created. And then we're gonna reference the endpoint here, which goes to the first value of the JSON. So we go OK. Invalid parameters. I have too many parameters, so let's get rid of that. Parameters of that, and we probably don't need that. Parameters, brackets. Okay. And then we copy this and we're gonna put into this API key. Again, same variable, but we're gonna reference a different value. If you remember that, our value is called API key. Okay. Now this is the body, and if you have a look at what we done before, and even with OpenAI documentation, it is exactly the same. Here you're gonna just put user role, which is the user message, the content, and we're gonna pick from here the dynamic content of the input. So we're gonna be that. By the way, you cannot add a role for the system here. For some reason, every time I add it and I go save, it disappears. So it looks like in this core, in this body, you can only just pass the user messages to the model. All right, let's save it. And we will do a test, quick manual test. Click on the test. We'll provide a manual inquiry to the model. What? So simple. How many days in the year? On the flow. So this input will be supplied to the body and sent to the model. Now we expect a much quicker response. It's done because we are using our own private model within Azure. We're not calling the public model, which have some capacity issues during the peak time. So looking at, let's click on this. Where's my raw output? Anyway, There are 365 days in standard year. However, in leap year, there's 366. Okay, so this just quickly demonstrates our flow is working with Azure OpenAI GPT-3 model we just deployed. Next, let's build our Power Virtual Agent. So click on New Chatbot. Remember, everything we built today has to be within the same solution. Okay, so this should load our Power Virtual Agent web interface, and we'll call it Chat GPT PV demo. We're not going to use boosted conversation here, so just go create. Now, the idea is we try to replicate the ChatGPT with Power Virtual Agent. So we're not going to build any topics. What we're going to do next is we're gonna modify the system fallback topics to link that with ChatGPT in the flow. Basically, pretty much whatever you're typing, it should trigger, because we don't have any topics, it should trigger the fallback topic, which calls the flow that make the API calls with our Azure OpenAI models. Okay, so let's go to our topics. Let's turn off these topics that we don't need. 1, 2, 3. Come to systems, and we will edit these fallback topics. Previously, we have talked about this, and unfortunately, there are still no better way to achieve this short memory that make the bots to remember the conversation history. We know ChatGPT automatically does that, but also has a limit. When we try to build a ChatGPT-like bot within the Power Virtual Agent, we need to replicate that. And the way to give the bot the short-term memory to remember the context is to pass all the previous questions and answers together at the whole conversation history, plus your new questions to the API call. Okay, so to do that, first we're gonna define this global variable. We'll call it conversation history, and we'll initialize it and with empty string. Then you want to add your first user question to it. And then we're gonna make the API call. So we'll call the model. Once we got the response back, we will append the response to the variable. So now the variable has the first question and the first response. Now, when we loop back, when user asks follow-up questions, we'll append second questions to the variable. And then we'll call the model, get the response, then append the response back again. You get the idea. So the key is we always going to use this global variable to make the API call, which always keeps the conversation. And the problem with that is eventually this variable will grow so large that hits the token limit for the model. Okay. Now there are other ways to solve that. It's not what we gonna discuss today, so we're gonna leave that. The system fallback topic kicks in when we couldn't find any match to users' questions. Okay, so the trigger is unknown intent. And you can see in this built-in fallback flow, there are a fallback count. If it's less than 3, then trigger this message. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to help. Then on the other conditions, it will go redirect and escalate. All right, we not gonna replicate all that. I'm gonna do that for another day. For now, let's delete all of them and just build our own fallback, which basically we want everything that user asks goes to the OpenAI model to do our API call with the Power Automate. Okay, so let's start with a variable. And then we're going to make a new one. Let's call it var conversation. And we're going to make it a global variable. Okay. Now, what's the value? As we said before, we're going to initialize it with an empty string. Okay. So that's step one. Step two, we're going to add user's first question to it. Now, remember, we are not asking because we are not triggering any topics. So we are not asking capture user's response. So we will use another method just to capture what user just typed in. Go to the variable, and we're gonna set the same variable again. So pick the variable, which is the global, the var conversation. And what value we want to give it this time? Okay, so we want to just add the user's response to it, the questions to it. So the global variable, so we just pick that one, which at the moment is empty string, is nothing there. We're gonna add, just give a space, and we're gonna add user's input. But because we didn't ask user a question, we can't capture their response, add the entire response like we normally do within topics. What we're gonna do is, here is your secret weapon. It's called system.activity.text. Basically, it catches those unintended user input. And now we added this substitute here, which just removed unwanted text. So let's go insert. Right. So at this stage, we have created a global variable, started with nothing, and then we added the user's first question to it. What's next? We're just gonna call the flow we just created. Call plus call the action, pick our flow. And we're gonna pass the input, which is our var conversation. So we'll pick that. This is our global variable. Remember, we always gonna pass this variable to the model. And then we'll get a response back from, okay, let's not to map this yet. Let's go to our flow. So the one we're looking at is this GPT flow. We go edit. So we need to modify our input and output from, oh, it's already updated for us. That's pretty good. Okay, so query, this is the input, it's gonna come here, call the model. That's great. Fantastic, there's not much we need to do. We're gonna pass this response back. So if we switch back to our fallback topic, the responses are being mapped. Let's write the user message back to the console. So we'll go to send a message, and then we'll pick the variable, which is the response that's being passed back. Simple as that. And don't forget, the last step we need to do is we need to set the variable again by appending the response back to the global variable. So we're going to pick up our global variable and the value. What the value is going to be this time? Let's go to the formula. So the value will be self, which is global.var. And what we're going to add? We're going to add the response that's got returned, which is the topic dot response. We'll go insert, save, and then let's test it. Here we come to the bot. Now, because we didn't define any topics, so anything I type in here, I'll expect it will trigger the fallback topic and send to the GPT model by our Power Automate flow. So let's say, what is the biggest country in the southern atmosphere? That, let's see whether our topic will be triggered. You can see the fallback topic triggered. Oh wow, it triggered. That was really quick. That is very fast. The largest country in the southern hemisphere is Australia. Okay, so it works. And if we come to our Power Automate flow, you should see the runtime 1 second. Fantastic. So now you can really see the power of Azure OpenAI model, because this is your private model within your tenant. Even though they might not in your region, but the performance is much better than you creating a public OpenAI model. Now let's see whether it remembers the conversation history. So let's do not mention Australia again. Let's say, what's the biggest economic drive for it? Economic drive? Does it make sense? Okay, you can see quickly it triggers the action Power Automate. Wow. Right. However, the biggest economic driver for any industry may vary. For example, well, it didn't really say Australia. Let's ask again. What's the population? Trigger that again. I'm sorry, I need more information. So this just proves the bot has no context. There's no short-term memory. And I wonder why, if we have a look at our fallback, notice every time I ask a question, it will trigger the fallback. As new, it starts from this top of the node, top line. And the first thing we did is empty the variable. So every time I ask a question, it's keep emptying the variable with no context. Of course, when you call the API via the flow, the bot has no idea what you're talking about. So what we need to do here is we need to set a condition here. We do not want set initialize this variable as empty string every single time. Okay, why it went there? We want to wind this up. Go back. So we want to add a condition here, meaning not every single time we want to empty this variable. Did it do it? It didn't do it. Okay, that's okay. Let's just start here. We'll add a condition. So The condition is going to be, we're going to check this global variable. We're going to check whether there is information in it. If it's not blank, that means there's some conversation history there, and I'm not gonna initialize it with empty string. So I will let it flow through. But in other conditions, I am gonna initialize it just like this node, and we'll delete that. Right, so we will select that, and we'll empty it. We can delete this. Okay, so this is our update flow. What does that mean? Every time you ask a question, it will trigger this fallback topic from top to bottom. Start over again. However, this time we're going to check whether this conversation variable is blank or not. If it is blank, that's fine. We fall under all other condition. Then you will start with empty string. That means we'll start a new conversation. But if it's not blank, we're not going to go through this route to get it cleared out. It will just go straight to this node, which is adding users next question, the system activity text, to this variable, and call this flow to do our ChatGPT, our GPT model API calls. Now let's test it out. So we'll ask another similar question. Let's say we'll reset this. What is the youngest country in the world? See whether it will hit the topic. Well, it went through. Call the model. Waiting on, oh wow, it's back already. South Sudan. Okay. Now let's ask a follow-up question. What is the population of that? Now, if it cleared that conversation variable, it wouldn't know what we're talking about. But this time it will. Okay. See? What language do they speak mainly? Again, if it didn't remember the conversation history, it wouldn't know what the questions. The official language of South Sudan is English, but number of languages also. Okay, so you get the idea. Now we are not clearing this global variable that holds our conversation history. That's how we give the bot a short-term memory. Now, before we wrap up, I want to show you one more new preview feature, how easily we can bring the Power Virtual Agent we just created into the Power Apps. So to do that, make sure you publish your bot already in the Power Virtual Agent. Next, go to your Power Apps. Let's create a new Canvas app. Let's call it ChatGPT PV demo. We'll make it phone layout. And just remember, this is a gated preview. You have to apply for it. And at the moment, I believe it only supports Canvas app. Let me show you how easy it is to bring your PVA bot to the Canvas app. All you need to do is click on Insert under the input, scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's not there. What you need to do is you need to go to Settings, go to the upcoming feature, look for Chatbot component, turn it on, come back here, try Insert Input again. Here we go, this is the Chatbot feature. Just need to drag it out, make it fill up your full screen, and then pick the bot that we created from the Power Virtual Agent. which is this one, PVA demo. Pick that, and it just automatically picks that. Your schema name is here. There's not much to do here. And that's it. This is how easy it is. Now let's play it and say, tell me about days and month. Now it's just gonna bring the whole PVA bot down, call the Power Automate, use the flow to do the API call with our OpenAI model. Here we go. It is that easy. Now I just want to touch on the multi-language support real quickly, since this question has come up many times among the community. Power Virtual Agent already support tons of language. As you can see from here, all the major language, you can just type straight into it. There's nothing you need to do. And you're probably already aware that OpenAI model has multi-language support as well. In the ChatGPT, you just need to type whatever language you want to say, major language, and it will respond accordingly. So if we come back to our demo, we can just type in, say here is Chinese, please tell me about the scientist's background. So not only it can switch between among different languages, it can carry on a conversation. This is quite amazing. Well, that didn't do in Chinese, but it understood my question. Let's do that again. 请用中文告诉我这些科学家的 Basically, I'm saying, please tell me about this scientist background again in Chinese. So this time it should respond in Chinese. And then we'll try another language. Okay, see? So the name it kept as English. Fantastic. That's what I want. And just explain every scientist's background, where they're from, what they do in Chinese perfectly. Next, I'm asking in French, what was the result? What outcome did it lead to as a result of US creating the first atomic bomb? Now, I wouldn't understand this, but we'll probably put in the ChatGPT to translate, but for you folks who understand French, you can probably tell me, and I believe it's correct. Once you're happy with the app, don't forget to publish. Once it's been published, we can go back to our solution and include the Power App into our solutions. So, did it do it? Let's go back. Go to solution, open the solution up, add existing apps, Canvas app, and outside the Dataverse, let's pick this one, go add. And now we're done with the whole solution, and if you want to deploy it to a different environment, you can just export a solution to a zip file. Here comes to the end of our video. So today, we have created our own ChatGPT and wrapped it up into a Power Apps. We created a Power Virtual Agent with our own Azure OpenAI model. We called API in a Power Automate flow. We also used the Power Apps solutions and environment variables. In the end, we had a brief look at multi-language support, which shows the capability that you can just type any major language into the bot and the bot will respond. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.